In March 2025, I got the chance to travel again. My partner Zoe had just accepted a new job, but she had only about a month before her new start date, so she put in her 2 weeks' notice right away, and that gave us a good window to travel. My job was pretty flexible, with paid time off, so it wasn't any worries for me. So the next morning, without overthinking it too much, and maybe we needed to think a little bit more, we booked our flights to Taiwan. Taiwan had been on my mind since fall of 2023. I was flying to Thailand and Asia for the first time, and we flew with China Airlines, which is a Taiwanese airline actually. We connected through Taipei, and I remember during takeoff and landing, they would show these tourism videos with beautiful places around Taiwan. Amazing food, modern cities, great scenery, and it just really stuck with me. Since my last bike tour in Europe, I've been wanting to do another one. And after some research, Taiwan seemed like the perfect place. The video you're about to see, well, probably the next few videos, are going to be me documenting my 15-day trip around Taiwan. We're starting the journey, walking to the bus stop there. Our you gotta get used to it. I'm gonna try to narrate this one.
You are?
Yeah.
Oh, it's embarrassing.
Our route to the airport's kind of complicated, so I'll see you there. It's gonna be something like on the different. It's gonna be like a shot of getting on the bus, getting on the train, getting on another bus, on the bus, and then getting on the train, yeah.
I-5 and Ken Des Moines.
We arrived early in the morning in Taipei. Not a lot of sleep, and not a lot of things open. So we wandered over to Taipei 101, ate some food in the food court, saw the famous damper ball that helps prevent it from swaying around and stuff, and took some funny photos. Look, there's me with a bear. Zoe, the angel. And then we went to this arch thing. Got stuck in the back rooms of the metro system for a couple hours. And then later went out on a nice little hike to see the evening skyline. There's Taipei 101. And then we attempted to order some street food at the night market near our hostel. The language barrier was a bit of a shock for us. And I was finally able to get some sleep. We stayed at a pod hostel or something. And this was their mascot, the three bears. So the next day, with a little bit more sleep, we were able to grab our bikes. We were renting from a place called Matthew Bikes out of Taipei. And with all that going, we were ready to go. Are you ready, Zoe? The bikes we rented were Frogging Taiwanese branded steel frame bikes with smaller wheels, 24-inch. But they were on wider tires, so they were still pretty comfortable and got us on pavement and on gravel pretty easily. Day one of our journey will see us start leaving Taipei and heading south, following the Tamsuyu River. We'll be following that for the first half of the day before splitting off and heading up into the mountains near the Yangmi district for our destination. Should be about 35 miles, but it's going to be a lot longer than that, as you'll see. We weren't sure how serious we were supposed to take these signs, so we just followed them right off the bat. Later on, we learned no one followed them. Let's see how we climb. Your first day bike touring in a country you don't know a lot about can be a little bit confusing, and there's always a lot of lessons learned. Understanding the different rules of the road, understanding what signs mean, and knowing what rules people do and do not follow. You're just riding by that "do not ride your bike" sign, for example. Our first day would lead us on Route 1. This was a major biking route that would take you all around the country of Taiwan, and we'd be following it along the river for most of the first day. And I say this without an exaggeration, that the Taipei park system is the best park system that I've ever seen in my entire life. We took the first stop of many 7-Eleven journeys. It's kind of like a little bit of an oasis in an urban area, and I had my first lunch. A little bit of curry, some sports drinks, and of course some gummies. An essential snack on any long biking journey. We were soon spit on to smaller rural roads, and we're leaving the mega metro area of Taipei before heading back into the park system along the river. I don't know if it was a holiday or because it was Sunday, but on this park system, and just in general in Taipei today, there were so many families and children just out and about enjoying themselves. And that was one of the first big differences I noticed between American and Taiwanese culture. I feel like Americans spend their leisure time and with their family very often on their own private property, in their own secluded backyards. Where honestly, in most places outside of the United States, families and communities spend their time in third spaces, something that I feel like the United States oftentimes lacks. Here's an incredible pedestrian suspension bridge that we stumbled upon, but we were finally off of the park system and onto Taiwan's chaotic roadways. It's currently 5 o'clock, and we just follow Google Maps for a little bit. This road looks to be completely under construction. We're racing a little against daylight, but I think we'll make it. We have enough time. At this time, I want to note that we were mostly using Komoot for navigation, and every now and then Google Maps. This was an example of when Google Maps led us astray. So that footage you just saw was us going down one of the most surreal roads that I've ever been down in my life. And we decided to stop by this place called the Longnan Tourist Pond. We can look at it. I don't really see a lot of tourists here, so I'd like to think that this is made for us. Okay. We proceeded to head another 5 to 10 miles to where we were staying for the night on the side of a mountaintop, so it was kind of uphill. It was kind of a weird abandoned spa and resort with hot springs. It was nice, but a little strange. Nonetheless, nice to get some rest. Morning. We're starting off day 2 today. I think we're going to go down to Taichung. Yeah, I spent last night in kind of a weird resort, but we pay like 1/5 of what the price is. Just the things that you get on booking. Yeah, but I think before We get into the depths of the ride. We're gonna go down into town and get some breakfast. We stopped for the morning to eat some beef noodle stew. This reminded me a lot of a common breakfast dish that I would eat when I was in Thailand. It was hearty, fatty, and perfect to start the day off. Day 2 would see us travel a little bit over 50 miles, continuing to head south, going through the major port city of Hsinchu before leading along the coast. We would travel south along the coastal trail before heading inland, where we would take a train from Aioli to Taiwan's second largest city of Taichung. Unlike a lot of yesterday, today started off on a quiet rural road. It often feels like the second day of the journey is where you can start to really appreciate what you're doing. That's kind of how it felt on our second day in Taiwan. We learned a lot of lessons on our first day, and we're ready to tackle the long journey for our second day. We stopped by our first Chinese traditional temple of the journey. Something I noticed about Taiwan and had to look up to confirm was there isn't necessarily a predominant religion ruling over the entire country. It seems like a big mixture of folk Chinese religion with some Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam mixed in. After riding through some beautiful rice paddies in rural areas, we entered the outskirts of Hsinchu. Something that I really noticed about Taiwanese urban design is that it was extremely dense. Very common to see high-rise, multi-story family buildings in small to mid-sized towns. We stopped by a little pump track that we found under a freeway and had some fun with that. Then stopped to take a rest for a little bit. It was starting to get hot, and we were starting to not understand how brutal the UV index is in Taiwan. We stopped and gawked at how many cowbirds were on these two trees. I mean, look at that. And continued to head west until we saw the coast for the first time on our journey. We ran into some roadblocks and unexpected trail closures after lunch. But we eventually found our way back along the coast. We'd spend the next 20 miles and 2 hours or so hugging Taiwan's western coast along the seaside path. Things weren't too bad right now. It was a little hot, but it's always nice to be away from traffic. And we were feeling pretty good. Look how happy I was. We've been posed by the lobster mascot for this trail. Something I've learned about, at least the northern part of Taiwan, is almost everything has like a cute little mascot going along with it. We stopped and took a little break along a crab watching boardwalk, only to find out that it was closed for the day. It's pretty empty on this coastal trail. I don't know where all the people are, but it really was just us for most of the day here. We eventually pulled away from the coastal trail, heading inland a little bit more. And boy, were things hot right now. Things felt a little bit more ugly than along the coast. Weirdly enough, it reminded me a little bit of Latin America out here. Yours is taking the pounding. We eventually pulled away from that bigger road and onto smaller roads, surrounded by rice paddies and beautiful farms yet again. Inching closer to our bike destination of the day, Maioli, we were starting to feel a little bit tired. The back-to-back 50-mile days were really starting to wear on us. but we finally entered the city around late afternoon time. So we're currently in a train station in a city or town called Maioli. After biking about 50 miles today, we're gonna hop on a train to a town called Taichung. The train we took to Taichung was a local train, which meant we just kind of had to wait with our bikes in the cart with us, which was a little bit awkward when it got a little bit busier, but all in all, not too bad. We made it to Taichung though, with a very spacious elevator waiting us at the station, followed by the world's smallest elevator at our hotel. But it was a place to rest, and for our tired legs, a bed was all we needed. I wish we'd spent more time in Taichung. We spent the morning and the evening before there checking out the night market in the local park. But before we knew it, we had to keep ourselves moving. We only had 15 days in Taiwan, and unfortunately we had to cut some things out, which included a large part of Taiwan's west coast. We headed to the Taichung rail station and caught a train down to Tainan. In Tainan at the train station. I think we're going to bike over to a place maybe to spend the night right now. I was always trying to look for my hat. Tainan is a small coastal city in southern Taiwan. That was actually its original capital. It's known for having a lot of history and a lot of culture. At this point, we were really starting to feel what southern Taiwan was like. A little bit more chill, a little bit more laid back compared to its counterpart in the north. Now, I think it's a pretty good opportunity to explain how you take left turns as a cyclist in Taiwan, because sometimes these roads are busy and they don't really have left turn pockets there. So what you generally need to do is filter up into the bike box with all the other motorcycles. I'm using bike and scooter interchangeably here. And then you go for your green straight signal, and then you veer off and do a jug handle type turn into a box to the right. Here you're at a through oncoming traffic, and then you just simply wait for the next signal to turn green. It often takes a lot longer because you're just going through two different cycles instead of one, but it's also a lot safer, and I wasn't in a big hurry to get through these massive intersections anyways. We found a hostel to stay for the night pretty easily, and then with the rest of the day on our hands, we biked out to the nearest national park. It's called Green Tunnel National Park. And something you come to appreciate about the United States when you're traveling outside of it is just how well they do their national parks. This is a national park and it was beautiful, but we were on a janky little boat about for a half a mile, and just outside of the frame of these trees, it was just a bunch of construction sites. Nonetheless, pretty cool time in the mangroves, saw a cool temple, and stopped by a historical salt factory overtaken by banyan trees. From there, we headed back to the hotel and got a good night's rest for what would be the hardest day of the journey coming up. We woke up early the next day, trying to take advantage of the cool morning, knowing that the highs later in the afternoon would be in the high 90s. From Tainan, we would continue to head south, hugging the coast for a couple miles before heading back inland and hugging a highway for about 20 or so miles into the major port city of Kaohsiung, which is actually a sister city of Portland, Oregon, so shout out them. From there, we would continue to head south to our final biking destination for the day of Donggang, where from there, we'd take a ferry onto the island of Liki. Something that became immediately obvious as we were leaving Tainan was how poor the air quality was for the day. The AQI was in the low hundreds, which is pretty unhealthy, especially when you're outside biking in the elements for most of the day. I'm sorry for the little camera flickers here, and from the past couple days, I think the heat or something does that to it. but it kind of gives a good effect for show how hot it is. We had our first gravel of the trip, but only lasted a couple hundred feet before we spit back onto the highway, continuing south into Khao Swing. The morning from 15 miles or so outside of Tianjin. We're gonna try to go to Dongeng today, where we go to a little island. It's pretty polluted right now. It's hot, it's humid, and we're just going on pretty much a highway for the whole day. So not the most fun, but we'll get through it, and we'll have a good time at the end of the day. The pollution for the day got so bad that we ended up having to buy masks. And having a hat on, mask on, and sunglasses on, we kind of felt like we were out of a sci-fi movie. And I was really questioning why I was doing this at this point. How did I think that this was fun? I wasn't able to get a lot of footage, and this is us just entering Khao Swing for the next couple of days, and the next clip is really going to tell you why I wasn't able to get a lot of footage. It's hard to film when you always have to watch your back. So that was pretty hard. Like I said, most of the road was pretty dusty, pretty polluted, super busy, and on top of all that, it turns out a lot of it was under construction. So the bike motorcycle lanes that they use here that you just saw were mostly closed, so we were going in mixed traffic with like semi-trucks, construction vehicles, just everything. Wasn't the best cycling, but at least we're done with it now. Completely demoralized, questioning why we were doing this, and on the verge of tears, we had to keep going. We had about 20 or so miles left of the trip, and we knew that was probably the worst part was behind us. However, the heat was still cranking up, but at least we got a refuge in the beautiful parks of Khao Swing for a little bit. They had a great trail network also. And the whole city kind of gave me a vibe of what I would picture Miami would be like. Pretty high-tech, a lot of high-rises. Felt pretty cosmopolitan and a little swanky, but nonetheless, a really beautiful city. We stopped to get some lunch at, you guessed it, another 7-Eleven, and continued to head south. It was reaching about 90 degrees at this point, and things were starting to get hot. And oh my god, something that I hated about this day in addition was how many stoplights we had to go on. Unlike in the United States, in Taiwan, all of the signals were pre-timed, which means even if you're in the middle of nowhere, you can be stuck on a red up to 2 minutes just waiting there. I think on this day we were total cycling for about 8 hours, but only about 4.5 of those hours were us actually moving, which means the other 3.5 hours was us stopped at some point. Well, nonetheless, at this point, we were traveling pretty far south and making pretty good time. It was in the upper 90s at this point. It was sweltering hot, but we were almost done with the day. We finally got off the highways. We had entered Dongeng in about maybe 20 minutes. And we're gonna then take a ferry to an island called, I think it's Kili. Sorry if I mispronounced that, but it feels so good to finally get off those roads and back into the rural areas. It seems like for the rest of the time until now, we're going to be cycling on the much less populated East Coast. We entered Dongeng in late afternoon, exhausted from the heat, but excited to be done. So we got to Dongeng, and we're currently going on the ferry to Luchi.
Something like that.
Long hard day, but this AC, it feels so good. It feels so nice. The ferry ride was about 30 minutes long. That didn't matter. We were just happy to be relaxing. So we made it to the island. So now we just gotta go up to our hostel. We spent the rest of the evening gawking at sea turtles. I've never seen them before. Eating great Japanese food, and then for the next morning, actually snorkeling and getting up close with them. one of the best experiences of my life.